Good morning and welcome to Pathways Online. I'm Marty Kosmersky and I'll lead us through the online service today. We recommend that you set your screen to speaker mode for this service. This is Common Ground, Pathways celebration of worship for people of many paths who are gathering virtually to share in the responsible search for meaning and truth. Pathways is a warm and open community where all who come with open minds and kind hearts are welcome, regardless of ability, age, race, gender identity, or sexual orientation. If you are visiting us for the first time today, we welcome you to our virtual service and hope that you'll stick around and visit us in person when we can be together again. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. To send us a note about your visit or ask more information about Pathways, email at office@pathwaysuu.org. We hope that all who join us today find this a safe and inspiring online place to worship. Morning Has Broken is a hymn first published in 1931. English author Eleanor Farzan wrote the lyrics inspired by the village of Alfriston in the UK. In 1972, Cat Stevens recorded the song, and it was the #1 hit on the easy listening chart in the US. With your mics remaining on mute, sing along at home and enjoy Morning Has Broken.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first breath. Praise for the sweetness of the left arm, sprung in completeness, where to see the light. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one night, eating salt flame. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world.
Our virtual chalice lighting was written by today's speaker, Reverend Lisetta Thomas. We light this chalice with joy, joy in our many blessings, and joy enough to share with those around us. May we be welcoming to all those we encounter and loving to all creatures, great and small. As the light of this chalice burns brightly, may it be a symbol of joy that burns within our hearts for all people and all of creation. And now let's read together our Unitarian Universalist sacred promises. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. Our call to worship today was written by our speaker, Reverend Thomas. Let the noise of the storms around us be silenced. May our mouths be filled with laughter and our tongues with shouts of joy. We will watch as joy spreads across the face of the earth to all people of all ages. Let us break the silence of strife and fear by shouting our blessings. Come, let us put away the things that separate us and change our world. May every voice be raised in hope, love, and joy, so that we may be one in mind and spirit. Some of you who grew up in Southern Christian churches may have sung, "I've got joy, joy, joy down in my heart." Today, you'll hear a more grown-up and pop-inspired version of this song by brothers Joel and Luke Smallbone, who perform as For King and Country. This Grammy-nominated single, Joy, features a 100-person choir and a hypnotic wave of rhythm and electronic sounds. It hit #1 on the top 10 chart and has been streamed more than 18 million times. Now, with your mics on mute, sing loudly and boldly and with joy to this peppy song.
Lately I've been reading, watching the nightly news. Don't seem to find the rhythm, just wanna sing the blues. Feels like a song that never stops. Feels like it's never gonna. Gotta get that fire back in my bones before my heart turns into stone. So somebody please pass the megaphone. I'll shout it on the count of 3. I'm singing to the sky. Give me strength to raise my voice. Let me testify. Oh, I'm praying tonight. 'Cause this is do or die. Time has come to make a choice. Let it move. Let it move. Let it move. Yeah, I choose. Let it move. Let it move. Let it move. Back when I was young, my eyes were full of life. But now that I am older, I live at the speed of light. Feels like the cycle never stops. Feels like it's never gonna. Gotta get that fire back in my bones before my heart turns into stone. So somebody please pass the megaphone. I'll shout it on the count of 3. I'm singing to the sky. Give me strength to raise my voice. Let me testify. I'm ready now, 'cause this is do or die. Time has come to make a choice. let it move, let it move. Yeah, I choose. Let it move, let it move, let it move. In the shadows of night, I'm with you by my side. I'm stepping into the light. I choose. Let it move, let it move. Joy, 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 down in my heart to stay. I need that joy, 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 down in my heart to stay. Joy, 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 down in my heart to stay.
And now Luke Kimball will read Psalm 30, Thanksgiving for Recovery from Grave Illness, a song at the dedication of the Temple of David.
I will extol you, O Lord, for you have drawn me up and did not let my foes rejoice over me. O Lord, my God, I cried to you for help, and you have healed me. O Lord, you brought up my soul from Sheol, restored me to life from among those gone down to the pit. Sing praises to the Lord, O you, his faithful ones, and give thanks to his holy name. For his anger is but a moment, his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes with the morning. As for me, I said in my prosperity, I shall never be moved. By your favor, O Lord, you had established me as a strong mountain. You hid your face, I was dismayed. To you, O Lord, I cried, and to the Lord I made supplication. What profit is there in my death if I go down to the pit? Will the dust praise you? Will it tell of your faithfulness? Hear, O Lord, and be gracious to me. O Lord, be my helper. You have turned my mourning into dancing. You have taken off my sackcloth and clothed me with joy, so that my soul may praise you and not be silent. O Lord, my God, I will give thanks to you forever. Here's another interpretation of Psalm 30 from the New Revised Standard Version. It's a modern reading by James A. Forbes. Proclaim a theology of divine righteousness, which demands justice, respect, tolerance, compassion, inclusiveness, trust in the ultimate efficacy of divine zeal, and the rigorous pursuit of peace in the midst of competing interests and faith claims.
Reverend Lisetta Thomas is a native of El Paso, but she has lived in Fort Worth area for over 30 years. She is a school counselor and a licensed therapist. She received her master's in divinity from Union Seminary in New York and her MS in counseling from the University of North Texas. She first became a minister with the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches while in seminary. Most recently, she served for 18 years as the clergy in residence at Celebration Community Church, where she was ordained. Her ordination was accepted by the United Church of Christ in October 2020. Her free time is filled with taking care of her three beloved dogs, Lucy, Ricky, and Annie. Growing up in the dry climate of El Paso, she believes some of the most beautiful mountains on earth can be found in the desert. She loves rain and always felt that she can get through anything that life throws at her on those days when it rains. Joy after the storm. And now we welcome Reverend Lisetta Thomas to our Zoom pulpit.
Hello, I wanted to thank you for asking me to speak this morning. I'm delighted to be able to be here and to share the meaning of this psalm today. The superscription found at the beginning of Psalm 30 varies depending upon which version of the Bible that you're referencing. Some versions say thanksgiving for recovery from a grave illness, a psalm. Others say a song at the dedication of the Temple of David. The biblical scholar Christine Yoder describes the psalm as interweaving personal testimony and communal thanksgiving, and that's why I chose it today. There's no doubt that it was used for more than one occasion, just like we often use songs for more than one occasion. It gives thanks for recovery, perhaps after the illness of the writer of these words. Yoder tells us that the Talmud associates Psalm 30 with the festival of dedication in 164 BCE. This was after it had been desecrated by Antiochus IV. Regardless of its origin, most scholars believe it was used in a community setting at the dedication of the temple, perhaps the second temple also. Such psalms were used in a variety of settings. Put in everyday terms, this psalm sums up how many of us feel when we're in the midst of the storms of life and when we finally make it to the other side of the storm. This passage traces that journey. God sees us through the storm and keeps our foes from gloating. We pray for help and God pulls us out of the great abyss. We're not alone. The nights of crying our eyes out give way to days of joy. And God changes our wild lament into dancing. We burst with song and cannot thank God enough. But God's timeline doesn't always match with ours. Some misinterpret this type of lament and think that the implication is God brought the crisis upon us as some sort of test. That is not the meaning of the passage. The psalmist professes that God turned her weeping into joy and her mourning into dancing. The psalmist does not attribute difficult times to God. Good times and bad times are part of the human experience. God does not create the crisis. God sees us through the crisis and brings us to a new day. However, perhaps it is the bad times that help us rejoice in the good times. At the very least, they help us to acknowledge and appreciate our blessings. The question this morning is, what does this mean for us? What do we take away from this passage that helps us live our lives with joy? The past year and a half have been stressful. These months have been filled with fear of the unknown, only to be outdone by fear of the known. Everyone I know has at some point in the past year and a half worried about their loved ones and themselves. We've all become accustomed to using phrases like the new normal, our bubble of friends, and social distancing. Who would have imagined that we would be giving masks as Christmas gifts 2 years ago? I walked into a bank the other day with my mask on and thought, if I'd done this 2 years ago, the teller would probably have hit the alarm, fearing I was going to rob the bank, or at the very least alerted the security guard to the possibility of that and to my appearance. In addition to being a therapist, I'm also a school counselor. And in Fort Worth ISD, we all left on March 6th of 2020, and the counselors did not return to school until the end of July. Having worked in the public schools for a number of years, I always prayed for snow days. It's a teacher thing. In the beginning of the pandemic, it was like a 4-month snow day. Sure, there were lots of phone calls to be made to parents and students and a few weeks of entering data remotely. But I had more time on my hands than I had had since I was 12. Then we all began to learn that Zoom was more than a comic book term and the sound that a car makes as it's speeding by. But overall, in the beginning, it was almost fun. Then we all fell into the collective COVID-19 abyss. The people I knew started losing their jobs and getting sick. Suddenly, baking cookies, making enchiladas, and organizing every closet in my house became helping others. My bubble of friends began attending graveside services because we couldn't be inside together. We all started planning funerals and memorials to be held sometime in the future for our loved ones. I think you would be hard pressed to find someone that did not experience their own private storm in either 2020 or 2021. For most of us, these storms became very personal. For some of us, the storm has not yet passed. People we knew began to get sick, and it was no longer about the other countries or other states or other cities and their problems. For me, it brought back memories of having been a hospital chaplain during seminary in New York City. It was the height of the AIDS crisis. The memories that I have always tried to forget and rarely talk about. People turned a blind eye to AIDS because they never thought it would impact them. Perhaps that's a good description of how this was in the beginning. During this current storm, most of us have found ourselves unable to attend church in person or see our friends and loved ones. The comfort of a nice dinner and a nice restaurant or a trip to our favorite pub is gone. Sunday mornings found churches empty, and I found myself relieved by the knowledge that I still had a job and enough to eat. The psalm reads, "Weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes in the morning." For many people, it has been difficult to believe that morning was going to come. There will always be good times and bad times. It's a part of the ebb and flow of life. And yes, the bad times, the storms, help us to appreciate the good times, the mornings filled with joy and calm. My mother used to always say that regardless of how bad things look for you, there's always someone who's in a situation that is worse than your own. From my viewpoint, that was true for my middle sister. First, one of her favorite cousins died. Then her house was struck by lightning and burned. Then her husband had to have knee surgery, which failed. Then her husband had to have knee replacement. Then our much loved oldest brother died. Then both she and her husband got sick, and then she got very sick. Then another cousin died. Then after moving back into the house that they had to rebuild, the snow event we now lovingly call Snowbid hit. And after 45 hours of no power, their pipes burst, froze, and flooded the house. It was almost like a modern day real life Job story. On my worst day, I think about what the fall of 2020 looked like for her, and I count my blessings. At the same time, I know that different versions of her journey have played out across the country in the lives of many people. Fear, and let's face it, paranoia of being in contact with others, a loss of trust in the government, and just trying to stay healthy began to consume most of the country. Most everyone I know will tell you that at some point they've been overwhelmed by fear. Psalm 30 is not about a plague. It does not support any strange concepts of God testing us. It is a prayer of thanksgiving and a promise of hope for all who are struggling. Here it is used to celebrate restoration, restoration of health, restoration of the temple, restoration of joy. Although attributed to David, we really have no idea who the author is of this psalm. Its language and imagery call to mind the human experience. Will always be good times for all of us and bad times for all of us. But nothing stops the rise of the sun. Nothing stops the new light of morning spreading across the sky. It is sometimes all we need to remember and to survive the storm. This psalm is a mixture of personal thanks and thanks to the community. You know, the temple was the heart of many ancient communities. It was the gathering place for people. When the temple was destroyed, the gathering place for the entire community was suddenly gone. COVID has shut down many of the places that we gather to eat, to play, to meditate, to worship, to pray, to socialize. We have had to isolate and figure out how to safely stay in touch with those we love. It's changed our lives and demonstrated the need to work to change our world. It's reminded us that issues such as healthcare and employment are impacted by injustice, by prejudices, by a lack of inclusiveness, and by social injustice. When we have faced and survived the storm, we become more aware of these struggles, the struggles that we have and the struggles of others. We realize that we play a role in changing our world and must be active in that battle. Our modern reading today was a quote from James Forbes, former pastor of Riverside Church in New York. Proclaim a theology of divine righteousness which demands justice, respect, tolerance, compassion, inclusiveness, trust in the ultimate efficacy of divine zeal, and the rigorous pursuit of peace in the midst of competing interests and faith claims. We've watched as people have lined up at food banks, while people willing to work have been unable to find work. We've seen how race has impacted availability of health care and our politics in this country. From this storm, we have learned that we still have a great deal of work to do before all people can enjoy the joy and make it through the storm to the morning. A strange thing began to happen to me as the disastrous events of the fall of 2020 began to impact my family. I started to think that even with sorrow, the death of my two cousins and my brother, I was blessed. And with that came the desire to be there and to help whoever I could help. I also began to see that many of my friends were making masks, delivering food, donating food to food banks, writing cards, and becoming more politically active. And they were happy to do it, and I was happy to join them. We felt blessed to be able to do all that we could to change the current situation. My friendships with people that I had barely known, that were perhaps only acquaintances, grew deeper and more meaningful. I had the opportunity a couple of months ago to take a 9-hour drive with my brother-in-law. As we reflected about the events of the past year, he suddenly started talking about how lucky and blessed both he and my sister had been. Now, given the events of the fall of 2020, that's not the word I would have chosen, either one of those words for that matter. Why did he feel blessed? Because he still had a job, and he knew that some people did not. He still had his wife, and he knew people who had lost their partner. He had insurance and could rebuild, and he knew people who had lost their homes and had nothing. He turned why me into why not me. He didn't think that for some reason bad things were never going to happen to him, that he didn't deserve that. Of all the people he knew, he thought that he and my sister had the means and the fortitude to survive it all and to be thankful. And they were thankful. You have turned my mourning into dancing. You've taken off my sackcloth and clothed me with joy, so that my soul may praise you and not be silent. O Lord my God, I give thanks to you forever. Now, I have to say, I don't know about you, but I've not quite reached the dancing part of this experience yet. But the sun always rises, and each new day brings new opportunities to change suffering into rejoicing and despair into hope. The sun always rises, and there is always something that will lead us to give thanks. Let us give thanks to God. However you envision God, whether God is your higher power, whether you see God as creator of the universe or your everyday sustainer, remember this: no storm can ever keep joy from coming in the morning. This psalm speaks to each of us today. It is about the human experience of life. It is about rebuilding community. It is about realizing that nothing stops the sun from rising. It is about greeting the morning with hope and new energy. It is about giving thanks. It is about survival and the return of joy in the morning. For those who sang and listened to these words, the storm has passed. May your storm and my storm pass quickly, for we know that joy will greet us in the morning. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisetta. If you have time, stick around after the service when we can unmute and have a discussion with Reverend Thomas. And now, with our mics remaining on mute, let's sing and enjoy New Morning by Jake Holsby.
Oh, Marty, we can't see the PowerPoint presentation.
Share screen.
I did share screen, but let me do it again. Let me take it down. Okay. Share screen. Up there now?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Look out of your window as the sun starts to rise. And if there is a worry weighing down on your mind, let it lie. And you know there is no time to dwell or hide. Taking what has been before and what is left to see. And if there is an echo lingering on from yesterday, let it be. In the morning, the road is clear for you to go your way. Here's a chance to break this tide, a chance to move across. Don't just dream and never tell. Take back what you lost. Face all of your demons as the fields start to glow. And if there is a yearning for a place that you don't know, let it sow. In the new morning, forget your fears Here's a chance to break this time, a chance to move across. Don't just dream and never turn. Take back what you've lost. Look out of your window as the sun starts to rise. And if there is a worry weighing down on your mind, let it lie. In the new morning.
Our virtual chalice extinguishing is a poem, Every Step a Praise by Ophir. Let every step be a praise of wonder, every breath a gasp of pleasure, every blink a new awakening, and may every journey lead to one more splendor. For we live in the midst of a glorious spectacle in which all is mystery and the pleasure is in the discovery. So let every touch be one of love, every sound an orchestra, every flavor a banquet, and every moment a fragment of eternity. We hope that each of you on your individual path through joys and questions of life found some common ground with your virtual travelers today. Every Sunday is new and different at Pathways. We hope you will join us for Common Ground Weekly. Our benediction was written by Reverend Thomas. May we go forth as one community, knowing that the potential for joy rests with each of us. And when the storm has passed, morning will come again. Go in peace.
Here we are. Unmute.